Good morning. The dog is wandering around and comes across a bone. Picks up the bone, starts to chew on it. And as the dog is gnawing at this bone, it realizes that this bone has been sitting out for some time. It's been bleached of any residual meat or sinew on the bone. The bone marrow is gone. So it finds it pretty unsatisfying and just spits it out in disgust. Now, is there anything wrong with the bone? Yet I see in a lot of our lives, we'll gnaw at our bone for some time, realizing we're not getting any satisfaction out of it. We're not being fed the way we want to be fed. And it's not that there's anything wrong with the bone, it's just that we've decided to place our faith in that materiality, or that material thing. See, there is security in this universe and in this world, and that security comes from a knowingness that we are already one with God. There's no need to be more spiritual because we're already spiritual beings having a human experience. So, we are reading the book E-Squared by Pam Grout. Now, this is the last chapter. We've been doing this now for 10 weeks. And Pam Grout's book is available in our book and gift shop. If you weren't here for previous lessons, it's no problem. I've encapsulated each lesson so that you can, even if you aren't reading the book, you can at least get the concept. Previous lessons are available on our website, and you can, of course, request a CD of the Sunday service in our bookstore. Pam actually wrote this book to appeal to, say, agnostics or people that have just grown weary of more traditional spiritual belief systems, and recognizing that a lot of people just, if you talk about God or church, they have this negative connotation in their mind. So she said, well, how do you teach people that there's an alternative way of looking at things? And we've been, of course, having some book study groups that have been following along and meeting during the week to discuss the chapters. We've decided to organize a get-together of all of the different book groups here on Monday night coming up here in a couple of weeks. It'll be on Monday, April 13th at 6 p.m. Just kind of a closure party, but also just have a chance to share some insights that maybe your group had that other groups didn't. So this is the last chapter, chapter 9, the fish and loaves principle. So I'll have you go ahead and put up that next slide there, Candy. Excuse me. The premise of this particular chapter is the universe is limitless, abundant, and strangely accommodating. And this particular chapter touches on several different topics. Now, she didn't use this wording, but as I read through them, I thought these 4 titles for the concepts were good. Number 1 is, who says that there's not enough? Number 2 is sacrifice, schmacrifice. Number 3 is change the rules. And number 4 is reality, what a concept, hearkening back to Robin Williams' first comedy album. So, the first one, who says there's not enough? Isn't it interesting, that in our society we're taught very early on that there isn't enough to go around? Didn't you pick that up at some point? It's that there's a lack of something, and the truth is that there's more than enough to go around. There's more than enough building materials so that everybody can have a comfortable house. There's more than enough food to feed everybody and have everybody be satisfied. There's more than enough creative energy in the universe, that we can all have peace of mind. But we get caught up in being taught that there isn't enough, and we operate as if that is true. Now you may be thinking, well, yeah, that's what I'm experiencing in my life. Yeah, but you're probably experiencing it because you were taught. If you don't do this, this won't happen. That sort of a thing. And it doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor. There have been many rich people that have talked about how they still feel driven to accumulate more and more. In the book, Pam describes a wealthy man that was being interviewed, and they were introducing a new product. And the journalist who was interviewing him, as Pam writes, noticing the rabid dollar signs in his eyes, the reporter asked him if there was a profit margin, a success index, or a dollar amount of some kind that he would consider enough. And the business owner stopped for a moment, sighed, scoffed, and gave this reply. Man, you just don't get it. There's never enough. We act as if there's this game of musical chairs. And if we don't get our chair, we might end up without a chair. Contrast that to an interview of a German businessman. A conservative reporter was interviewing him, and they got onto the subject of taxation in Germany. He says, how much of your, income do you pay in taxes? And he said, well, I think it's like 55 to 65%. And the reporter just was shocked. It was 65%. And the German businessman tried to change the subject, but the reporter kept coming back to it. He said, how can you be satisfied with giving away 65% of your income? And the German businessman said, I don't want to be a rich man in a poor country. Our taxes support our education system, our health system, et cetera, et cetera. There's a totally different approach there, recognizing, we are, in this together. Now, there's a quote in the book by an Austrian poet. He says, most people come to know one portion of their room, one spot near the window, one narrow strip in which they keep walking back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's a sense of worry. Yet if we know our oneness with God, and we know that we are supplied with all of our needs met, our obligations fulfilled, and our desires demonstrated, that is what we'll experience. Now, number two is sacrifice. I grew up in a more mainstream religion, and of course, sacrifice, this is what's taught. And of course, here we are, Palm Sunday leading into Easter. So many of especially at the evangelical and fundamentalist end of the spectrum, is that, Jesus died for your sins. That because Jesus sacrificed, you need to sacrifice. And there's this meme that you need to sacrifice something good in your life. When in reality, when we look at the overall story, the Easter Passion, what Jesus is showing us is that we need to sacrifice what doesn't work in our life. We need to sacrifice those more human, those more unpleasant experiences that we've had. If we're doing something and it isn't working for us, can we let it go and ascend to a new level? More on that next week. We're told to wait on the Lord. But when you look at the new translations of the Bible, the word wait on the Lord, actually comes from the root word that means to bind together, to come together with. So instead of waiting on the Lord, can you come together with the Lord? Once again, that oneness. When you know that oneness, Eric Butterworth wrote, it's not a question of time, but a depth of your consciousness, your awareness of that truth. Expect to be guided and then get in motion. The important thing is for you to just recognize what it is you really love to do and make sure you're expressing it. There's something you probably do very well, better than anyone you know. There's someone that's pointed out to you that you do something very well. And when you do it, you just feel this passion, this rush of creative energy comes right there with you and through you. And if you aren't doing it regularly in your life, start doing it regularly in your life, even if it's just for an hour or two on a weekend. Make sure it is you're doing what you love to do. Number three is the rules. Change the rules. Pam Grout in the book mentions how she started to play a board game with her children, and they had some friends over. And she was trying to be kind by letting certain kids go first. And they, oh, no, you can't do that. It's against the rules. And she says, who says? And of course, they pull out the rule book, a couple of pages of the rules that you have to do. In the 1982 movie Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Captain James T. Kirk, at the very beginning of the movie, he's teaching at the Academy for Starfleet Commanders. And there's they've got a simulator sort of a situation. At first, though, we think it's real, but the young trainee is being faced with what seems to be a hopeless situation. And what it is you're at the edge of the free zone and the neutral zone, and there's a distress ship in the enemy territory. And they're calling out this distress signal, come help us, come save us. And you're faced with the fact that, okay, if you cross into that new zone, you're going to be attacked by the enemy. And you may lose your entire ship and your entire crew. But if you don't cross into the zone, the people on that other ship are going to die. So what do you choose? And of course, the woman who's the commander, Trady, decides to go into the enemy territory, and then her ship is attacked and seized, and they're going to board. And so she turns, she turns to Captain Kirk. It's like, well, what did you do in the situation? And he said, well, I hacked into the computer and changed the situation. I don't believe in hopeless situations. So what have you been taught has to happen in your world? Or what have you been taught is your lot in life? You realize that you can change the rules? You can change the rules. Jesus talked about changing the rules in his Sermon on the Mount, as they call it, Matthew's chapters 5, 6, and 7. One of the things he points out in chapter 5 is, you have been taught this Jewish law, but I think it needs to be different. For example, Matthew 5, 38th verse. You have heard it said that an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say to you, do not resist one who is evil. But if anyone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him your left cheek also. And if anyone would sue you, hand them your coat. Let them have your cloak as well. And if a Roman soldier forces you to carry his gear 1 mile, go with him 2 miles instead. You have heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you. Now, Jesus wasn't just being an iconoclast. In fact, he mentions a little bit earlier in this chapter that he is following what he believes to be the true Jewish law. He talks about the law and the prophets. For those of you who aren't into Bible study, the law and the prophet. The law is a certain group of books in the Old Testament, and then the prophets is another group of books in the Old Testament. Now, back then, the Old Testament hadn't been formed yet, but there were all of these scriptures that people would read. So in Matthew 5th chapter 17th verse, Jesus says, think not that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, till heaven and earth passes away, not an iota, not a dot, will pass from the law until it is all accomplished. So break out of the preconceived notions. And remember what I was talking about just a moment ago. Recognize your oneness with God. You're already there. You're already connected. You just need to awaken to it. We just need to reopen, reconnect our conscious mind with the divine mind. There are divine ideas out here, and all we need to do is to believe that they exist and then be willing to express the ones that are right for us to express. And then, as I alluded to a moment ago, what do you really love to do? You've got gifts, you've got passions, you've got talents that need to be shared with this world to make this world a better place. It's why you're here. And that's why we've been waiting for you. Number 4, reality. What a concept. One of Einstein's quotes is, reality is merely an illusion, albeit a persistent one. The author talks about a young girl named Karen Johnson who grew up in the projects in Manhattan. She had a pretty rough upbringing, but she would just love to come home and watch their little black and white television and the old movies that were on TV. She stayed up late night just to watch the reruns of the old movies. And she recognized that's what she wanted to do. She wanted to act. And she got so excited when she saw the original TV series Star Trek. There was a black woman, Uhura. And she wasn't a maid or a servant. She was actually there as part of the command structure of the ship. And she started thinking outside of the box of being a young black girl in the projects in Brooklyn, actually, I think she said. And her mom recognized how much she loved acting. And it turns out there was a program there in New York that's free, but for underprivileged kids as far as the arts, especially acting. So she got her enrolled in that. So she would act whenever she had a chance to do it in school plays and all that. But then she had to take some pretty unsatisfying jobs for her. But it was just a way to make a living. Yeah. And she got pregnant, had a kid, so then she had to do the single mother routine. But she kept acting, even like I said before, an hour or two a week, maybe on weekends, volunteering, doing it for free. Just you keep putting that energy out. And she had a chance to do a little one-woman show in this little theater in New York. She called it the Spook Show, in which she played a variety of characters. Now, at this point, someone had suggested to her that the name Karen Johnson is awfully generic, and if she really wants to be a success, she needs to come up with a fancy stage name. So she started thinking about one of the things she enjoyed doing was comedy, and how she saw some kids playing with a whoopee cushion. So she chose the first name Whoopi. Then for the last name, she had the misconception, of course some people would say it isn't a misconception, she had the misconception that to succeed in Hollywood you had to have a Jewish last name. And the only Jewish man she knew was a guy named Goldberg. So she came up with Whoopi Goldberg. So here she is in this little theater doing her one-person play where she plays all of these different characters. Some of you are old enough may have actually seen when they actually videotaped it. And in the audience one night is Mike Nichols, the famous Hollywood director. In fact, he just passed away here not last November. He said, "Wow, that's fantastic." And he talked to her afterwards. He was like, "I want to help you. We're going to produce this. I'm going to produce this for you on Broadway so that you can be in a big, house with a lot of people watching." And she was just so grateful that he offered her that kind of help. And when she's doing this play, which at that point they changed to, the Whoopi Goldberg show or something like that, in the audience one night, there's a director who was trying to cast his new movie and was having difficulty finding the right person for this particular role. His name was Steven Spielberg, and he was trying to cast the movie The Color Purple, and he chose Whoopi Goldberg, to play Celia. And the rest is history. But by continuing to put out that energy, recognizing what she loved to do, and just put that energy out, she allowed the universe to come help her. Because when you put out that kind of an energy, it's like putting out a radio signal. And people pick up on it. And the people who can help you will come, and there will be a coincidence in your life. Okay, that should be it for that particular slide there, Candy. So chapter 9's experiment, the fish and loaves. So this is the last experiment, the last chapter of the book. The universe is a limitless abundance and strangely accommodating. Now out in our foyer or fountain room in the terrazzo floor in 1964, the minister at the time, Reverend Charles Roth, insisted that inlaid in the floor there is a mosaic of the fish and loaves. And the reason he chose that is because he had visited Israel. Here we're going to be going to see this movie, Jerusalem, next Saturday night. And there's this little church off in the middle of nowhere, and supposedly it's where Jesus did the ritual of the fish and the loaves. And inlaid in their floor was that mosaic. And so Charles Roth said, "I want this inlaid in the floor in Unity of Indianapolis for the brand new sanctuary that opened in 1964. So 51 years ago. In fact, it was Easter Sunday that they opened up this particular part of the building. And he said, "I want to know that Unity of Indianapolis will always be a thriving, prosperous place." Now, I did a more intense explanation of all of the symbolism, that wonderful story of the fish and loaves, back in November, on November 23rd, 2014. The title of the talk was The Art of Gratitude. As I mentioned before, it's on our website, and you can, of course, request a CD of November 23rd, 2014. But fish and loaves are symbolic of ideas and substance. So when the Christ consciousness, that divine part of you, has ideas, it combines it with a spiritual substance, and that using your imagination you can create whatever it is you need. Whatever it is you need in your life, and it will feed the 5,000. It'll take care of all of the needs of your 5 senses in the physical world, time and time and time and time and time again. Yet, you think about the story. 2 fish, 5 loaves, 5,000 people. Jesus, looking at this, realizing he needs to feed all of these people. And he looks at it and he turns his eyes to heaven and says, "Thank you. thank you. I look at what I have in my life right now, but I'm going to be grateful. Thank you. Because I know that I am already one with God, and God is spiritual substance, the field of potentiality, as Pam Grout calls it. And if we call forth that energy, it moves molecules, and it creates what it is that we need in our lives. But we are taught there is not enough. Bull-loney. There is enough. There is enough. So if you have a need, if you have something at your hand, just be willing to know. Have faith. Place your faith in God, the only place it should be, that something's going to happen. A coincidence is going to happen. Someone's just going to pop by. Pam Grout starts this chapter by saying, this concept dispels the myth, life sucks and then you die. And I want to take a moment to mention, she has a little epilogue to the book, a very short chapter at the end. And says, well, if you worked your way through this book and these experiments, you've proved to yourself that there's something beyond your sight, beyond the physical world, and you need to seek out like-minded people and get together with them on a regular place. And I hope you found that here at Unity of Indianapolis. So the experiment for this week is your assignment, if you decide to accept it. Is my focus on the negative keeping me from seeing reality? And the hypothesis is if I change my outlook and make a concerted effort to look for goodness, beauty, and abundance, it will show up in abundance. So in other words, are you willing to just for 48 hours, for 2 days, say, okay, I'm going to let go of my past experience, and I'm just going to look for goodness, beauty, and abundance, and see what turns up in your life. Pay attention. Send out the signal, and see what the response is. Our closing story is a 3-minute video from Steve Hartman of the CBS Evening News of an 87-year-old retired salesman who recognized what he loved to do, and that was to talk with people. And obviously he lived this concept of looking for the good in all situations.
In Toledo, Ohio, we met an 87-year-old retired salesman with an arduous passion. Jim Gagnon likes to call the people he loves on their birthdays.
Hey, Lynn.
Which wouldn't be so arduous if Jim wasn't so amorous.
Happy birthday. I'm a lover of people. I love you guys.
You just met us.
I know it. I gotta have your birthdays.
Jim started calling people on their birthdays shortly after his 21st. And in the 66 years since, he has amassed a list of thousands of friends, former co-workers, and random acquaintances, which he dutifully reconnects with every year.
And I hope you have many more happy days.
People like Gretchen Wood, an old customer.
I don't know him well at all.
Gene Lovejoy, who gave him a ride once.
It was a one-day thing.
Never saw him after that?
Never saw him after that.
And Rob Lohner, the neighbor of a friend of his.
Yeah, so the first time he called and wished me happy birthday, I thought, why is he doing this?
Jim admits, most of the people he calls, he wouldn't know them if he saw them.
Would you even recognize the name?
Give me a name. You give me
Florence Harris. Who's
Florence
that?
Harris.
You know who that is?
No, but I
But you're going to call her and wish her a happy birthday.
I knew her.
So how does the conversation go? You call it happy birthday. What do you even talk about?
We talk about everything.
Oh, he gives me different kinds of advice. Kind of even look forward to it.
I think it's nice.
Jim says older people especially seem to enjoy the call.
Hello.
He met Louise Hughes at a dance 32 years ago.
And how you been?
I've been real good.
When I get an older person, they're hungry for somebody to talk to. I got a guy right now, he'll talk 45 minutes. I don't know a word he says because he don't talk very loud. And I'll keep saying, yeah, that's right. But I just let him go.
And he does sometimes 4 or 5 of these calls a day.
Message.
It's very time consuming. But in an age when friending someone involves little more than clicking a mouse,
699.
it's nice to see someone making a genuine effort to stay in touch.
I just love the people. I love them. And what do they say in the church all the time? Love thy neighbor. And I hope that's what I've done.
Amen.
And I'll talk to you next year.
Steve Hartman.
Okay.
On the road. in Toledo, Ohio.
Thanks for calling.
Please, bye.
Bye-bye.
So recognize it may seem like a very small gesture, but if you know you need to do it, if your intuition says yes, go for it. Gospel of Matthew, 5th chapter, 17th verse. Think not that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have come not to abolish them, but to fulfill them. For truly I say to you, till heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished. And may you always be open to God's guidance and grace. It is now time for our tithes and offerings. So take what it is you're going to give today and hold it in your hand. If you give electronically on our website, unitydiviny.com, and the donation tab, just hold the amount that you're giving there in mind. And then open your heart and pour love into it. See the good that comes from opening to the flow of abundance in your life. Know that from this point forward, anything that you've ever done to block your good, to block your flow, is now dissolved. Starting right here, right now, you will prosper. You will give your gifts, passions, and talents to the world, and know that all needs are met, obligations are fulfilled, desires are demonstrated. Let's say the affirmation together up here on the screen. Divine